Welcome back to SwitchCorner. Today we're going to be taking a look at Spinch on the Nintendo Switch, promising a psychedelic take on the puzzle platforming genre. They had me personally at psychedelic, but can they really deliver on that promise? Well, today we're going to be looking at not only story, gameplay, graphics and audio, but frame rate too. So without luck, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here, join our growing family, and let's get started. So story, while it is minimalistic for sure, it definitely stands true to the psychedelic promise. It absolutely just nails that vibe. Here, colours are a living, breathing species with bodies that are made mostly of water and photons. The vibrancy of colour though means they expend immense amounts of energy and requires near constant feeding. That's where you come in, and it's not a good thing. Colour is a predator to you on Astral Island. Dinner is Spinch and Spinch is you. Now adults will not work though for colour, that you're too gamey, too little nutrients, but what will work? Your children. Opening the game, your children are kidnapped and you must now head out across 6 worlds and save your children before, well, dinner is served. It's pretty much a setup only and nothing more. It does very little to evolve past that point, but it's absolutely enough to set up what has to be, and understandably so, one of the most colourful games in the Switch library. So gameplay on what we have here is a puzzle platformer, not too far from the likes of Super Meat Boy. At its core, you've got to make your way from the beginning to the end to pass and move on, navigating like a slew of different enemies, traps, and even figuring out the occasional puzzle that I will say they're decent enough to, work the brain muscles, but never too complicated that they're going to really slow down the fast pace of the experience. Alongside this, though, you have a couple of optional objectives too, collectibles that come in the form of cubes. Collect enough of them as well and it will add like a small power-up, makes you invincible, and then your children, there's 3 within each level. Honestly, on booting the game up, I didn't really go out of my way to save my offspring. I saw on the menu the game featured achievements, but on my Switch I honestly don't care too much, so I proceeded on my way. Well, quickly I learned my mistake there. That's because at the end of each world it turns out there's a boss fight, and these children, they turn into bullets. The more babies you collect, the more ammo you'll be able to fire their way. You can even grab a bomb that you'll unlock if you find and beat a hidden level within each world. The bosses are really interesting. Basically you get 2 buttons, one to load your gun and then on the other side of the screen one to fire your gun. Naturally though, in between these 2 buttons, the boss is there ready to kick your ass. First one's honestly simple enough, and then the second one onwards, they ramp that difficulty immediately and it just absolutely destroyed me. The bosses, they're kind of old school. They go through like waves of attacks, think like the easy beginning, they get angry, slightly more challenging middle, and then finally the kick your ass ending. The second boss in particular had me stuck at his final form. It's like that old DVD logo that used to bounce around the screen. It just absolutely crushed me because it was so random. My only ask on these bosses may be a health bar just so I could see what they have remaining. It would have been a real nice touch. Lesson learned though, at these moments, save the babies if you want to make your life a little bit easier. General enemies as well, they come in all sorts of forms, from those that can fly to slower, more traditional enemies on the ground, to those you'll actually need to use to your advantage, which I won't spoil, but they're definitely fun. Enemy assortment and challenge all match the creativity you would hope for from a game that's channeling, psychedelic. The only one enemy I didn't enjoy, this bird-like capsule thing that dropped bombs for instant kills, just felt a tiny bit unfair and a tiny bit random, to be honest. The gameplay you can't really fault. The control mechanics simple but effective. You can move, jump, dash and swim, but I will say you're going to need to get used to Spinch's acceleration and slow down. Spinch kind of slides just a tiny bit and has to ramp up their speed. At first I'd even say it kind of felt sluggish, but once you get it down, you'll realise it's actually exactly as intended and part of the learning curve. You'll also be able to grab onto walls and grapple your way up and down. This leads into my problems though. Spinch in its own way is old school, from steep difficulty to looping attack patterns, but the levels can be lengthy. To combat this, they've included checkpoints, but they can be a little bit random on when you're going to cross one, and I would have liked to have maybe a bit more consistency in the frequency, rather than like huge chunks of the level that you'll need to repeat if you die, only to find the next ones are like 2 checkpoints right next to each other. On controls too, this is a weird one, but you can't use the left joystick for movement. It is D-pad only. Gotta say, the D-pad on the regular Joy-Cons does suck, so that was kind of a pain in the ass. I ended up playing with the Pro Controller to give me the control I needed. Now, I'm not sure why they would remove a joystick option. Why not have both and let us choose what we prefer, but it's part of the design. The next problem though is the big one, frame rate. It's not great. When you look at its clear influences, games like Super Meat Boy, they are just absolutely buttery smooth, and this thing can chug pretty often. When it works and hits that desired 60 FPS, it's insanely fast, but just occasionally it's going to come in waves and drop to around that 40 mark. But this isn't just like traditional slowdown, it's full on almost like skipping frames, and you'll see your character warp just slightly. Not only will you warp though, but of course so will your enemies and the world around you. In the background right now, you're going to see me take a hit in a second and there's nothing I could do about it. That's a big problem for a game built on precision. Sometimes I will say it feels more like traditional slowdown, but for the most part it's almost always these like tears and everything freezes for just a split second, shifts, and then you need to try and respond. Game's already hard enough without fighting against the game itself. If you're wondering as well, I tried it handheld and I can say the same problem exists there. Overall, look, we have some fantastic gameplay here, the sort of game that's going to kick your ass and demand you have a stiff drink at your side as you try to master the challenge. It even has reasons for you to go back with achievements to unlock, like there's one for taking no hits, which is just insane, or collecting all the babies. It even shows you your best time so you can master these levels in that way as well. The problem though, that frame rate is the absolute worst thing that can happen to a game in this genre, and it takes what was difficult but mostly fair into the realm of frustrating. Fix that frame rate though and we do have a winner here. Most genres, honestly, I can live with a few frame rate drops here and there, but it just doesn't work in this scenario when it's demanding so much of you, and the difference of a split second is so often very easily the difference between life and death. Really disappointing. So visually then, Spinch is epic, there's no way around it. The graphical style is absolutely stunning, and the first thing I did after leaving the game was go search for the work this artist has put out. He's an award-winning Canadian artist by the name of Jesse Jacobs, and his work kind of reminds me of an artist by the name of Alex Padre, and I was a fan immediately. Creative enemies, a colourful world, unique settings that just change frequently, traps that just like visually make sense so the game never really needs to explain too much to you via text. In fact, I don't think it explains anything to you via text. And then the animation, something satisfying about watching our little Spinch hop around this world. The only issue, just occasionally the hand-drawn like 2.5D does make navigating some of the more tight sections a little difficult, just down to the perspective. You just need to get used to what Spinch is touching and what is not. Basically, it's for the swimming moments. Outside of that though, look, stunning, docked or handheld. Like visuals, audio is solid. My hope was they would capture that kind of psychedelic feeling, and they did, but they did it in a very different way to what I anticipated. Sure, enemies, Spinch, they will have like minor sound effects, but the winning element, the music, composed by James Kirkpatrick, he has brought the psychedelic to chiptune, where they've advertised it as composed across modified Game Boys and circuit-bent handmade instruments, which is just epic in itself. Varying tempos, energetic, almost quirky at points, I absolutely adored it. It deserves a physical release of its own, and if it does that, I will be a day one buyer. Overall, Spinch is a good game. The gameplay is tried and tested, but while it should be celebrated for its gameplay, currently it's elevating itself thanks to the visual style and the music backing it. While I did find the occasional enemy, I will say, a little unbalanced, and the bosses a bit on the frustrating side when they bordered on kind of random rather than pattern-based attacks, there's very little else for me to complain about, honestly. Maybe that 2.5D like perspective that you need to get used to, but yeah, really not a lot. Even like D-pad only gameplay, it's weird, but I can honestly live with it. Don't know why they didn't give us the choice, that's beyond me, but whatever. But then the frame rate, and not just slow down, but full on skipping of frames, where you're going to teleport slightly, that's a huge problem. And the more challenging the game gets, the more likely this is going to cause you to make a mistake, or of course get hit, losing some life. It's a really tough one for me today to score. If the frame rate issue didn't exist, then this is an easy, great 8 out of 10. Might not be the longest of games, but it's a great ride. That said, with this major issue, I'm arguing with myself, knowing I truly can't get behind recommending it in its current state. If it wasn't for the visuals and the audio, I've got to be honest, this would be a lot lower, but I don't want to insult the truly stunning work on show in those areas. Today, I'm giving Spinch a slightly above average 6 out of 10, just with the stipulation, if you do jump in there, if you do play it, expect to face some performance issues along the way. Honestly, I wouldn't probably pick it up until we hear of a patch, And then I think, as I say, you can ramp this score up to an 8 out of 10 because it really is a great piece of work with just one serious issue right now. I will update you all in the pinned comment down below when an update does happen though, and I'll send out a community post the second I hear about it as well. With that, thanks for watching today. Will you be picking Spinch up and adding it to your collection? How do you feel about that frame rate issue? Is it enough to put you off, or are you still going to be willing to jump in and just battle on through? Just want to give a quick shout out to the publishers here for supplying a review copy as well, and then of course a massive shout out to the patrons of the channel who are going above and beyond to support SwitchCorner. It truly is appreciated and it helps more than you know, so thank you all so much. With that then, hit subscribe if you love the Switch as much as we all do here. Join our growing family, and I'll see you all on the next video. Thanks everyone.